So I didn't have a lot to do the last couple of months, and went through a few negatives. And as I was doing some scanning, it occurred to me that there were a number of issues with negatives that seem to be coming up over and over again. And part of it is sloppiness, part of it is bad luck. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to run through a laundry list of issues on some of my images that I had run into and that I had found, what happened here? There's some mysteries at the end that I'll show you. But a couple of caveats. First of all, these are raw scans. So if anybody starts commenting on color corrections, cropping, dust on the negatives, I'm not really going to have any of it because some of these are actually really pretty messy. So please be kind if you want to talk about the images. So that said, I think we'll just dive right in. So the first thing that I have on my screen here is Alan, and he's a bit pink, but regardless. And what you can see is it's really simple. It's just dust. And so, every negative is going to have its own fair share of dust. But what I'm showing you right now here is something that comes up. You can see, on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a little bit of dust, but not a lot. And then all of a sudden, there's sort of this cluster of little flakes. And then there's nothing on the right-hand side. And so if I go to my next shot of Alan, actually, I don't want to see that one. I want to go to Dirty Rollers. Here you go. Here's a shot of my daughter. And I actually really like this photo. But this is actually a really bad example of what's going on in both of these images. And that is that these images are done on a roller transport processing machine, as opposed to a dip and dunk. And I'll give you the pros and cons of dip and dunk in a minute. And whoever was running these things hadn't cleaned the rollers. And what you get is you get these very regular scrapes on the roller. And now this film runs left to right through the rollers, but what is happening is that the roller is imprinting a situation that is occurring again and again. And if you actually look carefully, you can see there's a whole bunch of smearing and smudging. And that's not dust, that's schmutz from the rollers. That little dot there, that's dust. But everything else that looks like it was smeared on there is because it was smeared on there. So going along with other situations that you have in terms of dust, this is an image off of an X-Pen. I'm just going to invert it and show you right on the edge of the frame, there's a little tiny piece of dust that's coming in. That's a piece of dust that's on the gate of the camera. And so every single frame I shot had this little tiny piece of dust coming out. And it happened again here, there it is, in Hawaii, don't save. And then I actually found a couple of other ones. This is my younger daughter when she was about 2. But you can see right on the top of the image, there's a bug in Photoshop where all of a sudden you can't use the hand tool. Let me rephrase that. There's a bug in my Photoshop where all of a sudden I can't use the hand tool. The console watchers. So we were looking through some of the demographics on the people who watch the show, and there's a small number of you, but you watch for way longer than anybody else, and those are the people who watch these videos on gaming consoles. So I'd like to say thank you very much, gaming console guys. It's nice to know that you like us enough to watch us quite a bit. You can see right at the very top, there's just a big lump. Same thing, I don't even know what it was, but it was right on the edge of all of the frames that I shot for quite some time until finally I opened up the camera, there it is there, and pulled it out. It took about 2 seconds to clean, but these truths come to us slowly. Another one here, so this is interesting. So this is another one of my kids, and not only does it have the dust on the top, but it actually has a really, really nice scratch right through the middle of the frame. And this is a scratch that was on there after the negative was taken. And the reason why I know that is because if there's a piece of dust in the camera and the film is scraping over top of it, what you're going to have is you're going to have a super duper straight line right through the frame left to right. And this line is neither straight, nor does it go all the way through the frame left to right. It starts just inside one edge of the frame and it finishes up about 2/3 of the way across the frame. So that is poor handling and operator error, definitely, rather than anything else. Now this is interesting. This is an image that I did a while ago, and this, you can see this little magenta line or a cyan line here in the image. that is actually a piece of dust on the scanner CCD. And this was a Microtech scanner, and I really struggled with getting it dust-free. So that's what that is. That has nothing to do with the film at all. That's a technical issue. And then, okay, so moving into overexposed negatives. This is a horrendously overexposed negative. I think I don't know if I gosh, I don't even know what I did. But anyway, but this is like 12 stops overexposed. And the reason why you know the negative is overexposed as opposed to fogging the film is because the edge of the negative is nice and clean. It's just completely obliterated where the actual image is itself. And then going along from there, so this is actually what fogged film looks like. And so this is film that after the image was taken was exposed to light. And the reason why you know that is because you can see edge of the film has been exposed to the light as well as the image itself. So that is pretty straightforward. There's another version of another frame, and you can see it repeating itself almost as if the roll of film had been exposed just on one side of the film, which I'm pretty sure is actually what happened. Moving along from there, so here's an unexposed negative, or probably underexposed negative. Right down the bottom of the negative, I'm sure you can see, it looks as if there's almost no tonality at all in there. And this was the magic of the Mamiya 6 meter before I figured it out, underexposing everything by a couple of stops. And this negative is actually, it is kind of usable, but not really. So the other thing that I wanted to show you is when you have no image at all. And this was this was totally my mistake, where I mixed 500 milliliters of water with 500 milliliters of water to expose, or pardon me, to process some film. And after I had stopped it and fixed it and washed it, I pulled it out and there was nothing there. And the reason why I know that there was nothing there and nothing was developed is because there's nothing there. There's no frame numbers, there's no manufacturer information on the sides of the negatives, nothing. It's completely clear. So, so going from underexposed to, I mean, this negative may well have been very well exposed, but it doesn't make any difference because it wasn't processed properly. Okay, moving along here. So, okay, so this is interesting. This is something that you will see mostly on 120 film and not so much on 35 millimeter film. Right down in the corner here, I don't know if you can see, there's that little, it's a dark spot, but it's actually a light spot on your negative. And what it is called cavitation. And what happens is that if you're agitating and you don't get really random with your agitation, with the developer running over the edge of the film, it creates a little bit of a back eddy and a little low pressure zone, and the developer stays there, gets exhausted, and you can't get new fresh developer in to continue developing it, and what you end up with is a whole series of soft, underdeveloped areas all the way along the edge of the negative. It's really weird. It happens to me a lot. I really try to agitate gently and agitate randomly to try and avoid this as much as possible, but every so often it rears its ugly head. And it's not over-agitation, because of course over-agitation would mean, I don't have an example of it, but would mean more stuff going across the negative, which would mean a darker negative, and this of course is a lighter negative. So that's what that's all about. So this is something else that's really weird. These little kinks, and what this is not a very good shot, it's pretty soft, but you can see them clear as day, and what that is actually, is that where you have a roll of film and you're loading it into your, you're loading it, and it has not been developed. And if you kink the film with a little, just a little kink, it will actually create a fogged area on the negative. If you try and do this with an already processed negative and then you scan it, you'll have a wrinkle in the negative, but you won't actually have a dark spot. So for whatever reason, when you kink it and it hasn't been processed yet, it will actually fog the film. The other thing that happens is that if you are processing your film and you have tape on the end of the film, and if you peel the tape off the film, it will often, in an area of, if you don't have a lot of humidity, you'll get some static electricity, and you will actually fog your film by peeling your tape off. And the reason why you know that is because you get these weird things right on the edge of your negative, which is not good. So whenever I process my film, I don't ever peel off the tape, no matter how much I want to do it. So this is an example of really awful film spacing. This is a Pentax 6.7 that was on its way out. Top two negatives are spaced properly, bottom two negatives are definitely not spaced properly, and these are they're 4 consecutive frames. So, so the difference is like night and day. So that is always a dead giveaway that something is wrong with your camera back or your camera itself. This is the end of a 35mm frame, and that is the tape that holds, so this is the tape that's actually getting in the way of a frame as opposed to the tape fogging the frame. But that's what happens when you are shooting with a camera and you get right to the end of the roll, in case you're wondering. Film and tape again, there's another one there, same thing as a roll of Kodachrome, and exactly the same thing happened there in my niece, who's very cute. So, okay, so this is interesting. This is, see if I can find it. I think it's over here. Yeah, okay, it's hard to see. I'm not sure if you can even see that, but there's something that looks like a fingerprint, and that's because it's a fingerprint. And I tend not to wear gloves when I'm handling film because it tends to slip out of my hands. So I really try to be careful to hold it on the edges, but every so often I make a mistake and I will leave a fingerprint there. And I wouldn't be very good. I wouldn't be a very good thief. Okay, so this actually is like the trifecta of awful. We've got in the corners of the image we have fogged film, and I think probably what happened is that somebody picked up the let's see, yeah, there it is there in black and white or in negative. Somebody picked up the top sheet of film and fogged all the rest of them in the box, and I didn't know it until I had processed it. But the other thing this negative has is a really impressive chemical stain. And this is, I mean, I processed it, so this is my fault. This is me not washing the film enough, and this is the residue, I'm assuming, a fixer, and over time that will probably ruin the negative. So that and that, you know, that white line and that little crusty bit, that's characteristic of chemical spills that, or a chemistry that hasn't been washed off properly. So here's a color frame, same thing, and lo and behold, there's a nice big chemical stain there. I did not process this. This was done in the lab. As far as I'm concerned, that's totally inexcusable because it's a really, really big one. And that's, anyway, that's what that looks like. What else we got here? Old film color shift. Oh yeah, this is just a shot where if you're wondering about fogging, I should have put this actually with the fogging images. But you can see on the edge of the frame, it goes from black to red, which is, and this is just a sheet of, or not sheet, a piece of film that's been in my camera for way too long, and it just got fogged just because of ambient radiation. Okay, so this is brutal. This is something you need to be really careful of. So you can see that stain right beside her head. That's a water stain. And so what happened was I processed this film, and I washed it and dried it, and then I wasn't paying attention, and I dripped a little bit of water on it. And in fact, actually, I think it may have touched another negative once it had been dry. I then re-washed the film, and it still stained it. So this has happened to me a couple of times. And so when they talk about handling processed film with dry hands and not getting stains on it, it's really important, or not getting water on it, it's really important. This is just a drop of water. That's all it was. And it was enough to, I mean, it's retouch-outable, but it's enough to make it, to leave a mark, quite literally. Okay, so this is a series of images. We did a video on this. This is my Hasselblad 203, where a piece of the internal baffling came off and randomly blocked a whole bunch of film. And so this has got nothing to do with a negative problem. This has to do with a light not getting to the film problem. But I just wanted to remind you, sometimes it's brutal and you get 6 or 8 or 10 frames or several rolls, and every single frame has this big black bar through the middle of it, and that was just really too bad. I'm still a bit miffed about that. Okay, so this, and when I was talking about dip and dunk machines, this is what happens when you put a roll of 220 into a dip and dunk machine and you don't have enough chemistry in it. And you end up with this really weird smear on the film because there wasn't enough developer. And the worst thing about this is not that it happened. Is that? Oh yeah, there's the same shot again. Actually, it actually happened to me twice. So this was another roll of film at a different time, same lab, same problem. They did not have enough chemistry in the machine, and they totally messed up the negative. And so I lost, over the course of however many rolls of film it was, I lost, half a dozen frames, and it was simply because they didn't have enough chemistry in it. So this was a terrible situation that Kodak had to deal with. I'm still a bit gutted by it. This is where the backing paper was offsetting onto the image the film itself. And I understand that other manufacturers have had this problem, but it was acute for me in Kodak film. T-Max 400, I lost dozens, I'd say probably 10 rolls of film that had, to greater or lesser extents, all the backing numbers and all the backing information written across all the frames. And it was really bad. That was just bad. Now, Kodak, to their credit, did actually comp me a whole bunch of film free of charge, which was very kind of them. And they have changed their backing paper, so it's no longer an issue. But regardless, it was still tough. This is simply bad handling. This is total operator error in terms of, if you look here, you've got all kinds of scratches and scrapes, I think, and then up in the edge here, that is where, that's, I think, more of that water damage that we were talking about before. So I guess that the edge of this film somehow didn't get dried properly or something like that. There's a bit of a smear, it looks like my fingerprint. So that's just poor, you know, just not good technique when it comes to handling film. This is actually just a shot. I just want to show you this. That's just some lens flare. So that's got nothing to do with the negative. That's just Palm Springs and sun shining in the camera. Next up here. Yes, camera shake. So nothing wrong with the negative. Negative, if you can see on the edge there, it's nice and sharp all the way around. Dog was staying still, camera was not. And the reason why we know that is because everything is shifted to the left or to the right. So I just, my technique showing its ugly, you know, poor technique. So this is another laundry list of awful things. Those two marks on either side of the negative, I use a system called a Mod 54 to process my black and white 4x5, and this is what happens when you load it backwards. And they're very clear about how you're supposed to load the camera or load the film, and I chose to ignore them, and that's what happens. If you load it properly, not a problem. The other thing that I wanted to show you is these soft lines that are running top to bottom in the image. Those are actually pieces of dust on the light tube from my scanner. And so it's always a dead giveaway when you start seeing that, especially on 4x5, you want to clean things. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else wrong with this. There's a bit of speckles and stuff like that. And you can see some dust on the edge there that's just on the edge of my film holder, but there's nothing in particular that is very bad about that. This is not really a negative problem. This is more of a scanner issue. I don't know if you can see that, but it's all kind of smeared. And I think the scanner, when it was scanning things in, got bumped. And so you do need to watch for that kind of stuff when you're scanning, so you don't end up in a situation where you have to rescan things. So, all right, back to it. Okay, so you can see what's going on here. I have no idea what this is. If anybody has any ideas, I'd love to hear it. It looks almost as if the emulsion sort of fogged itself and then clumped together. That's not what I want to show. Here it is again. Same thing, where you've got these really weird blotches, and they're not fog, they're not dust, they're not air bubbles, they're not anything like that. They're like weird. It's old film, so that might have something to do with it. I guess I can look at this shot. This, I think, is actually I'll just go back because you can see it. You can really see it. See on the edge of the film there, and on this last frame, see how you get that sort of that warm brown kind of a feel. I think that's underfixed. I think that's, so it's always good to have fresh chemistry for exactly that reason. And so this is interesting. So this negative, you can see on the right-hand corner here, there's a little drop of something, but it's a drop of color, and I don't know what that is. It's just sort of, it's a mystery. That's why it's called a chemical drip is what I have it titled. But I don't actually know what that is, other than I'm assuming, yeah, it's some sort of a drip of chemistry, but I don't know why it's got a color to it. Usually black and white chemistry leaves a residue rather than a color, so I have no idea what happened there. And then this one, this is Dave, looking his best, black and white. So this is a reverse fog. So in this case, rather than the film fogging and going dark, because that's usually what happens when you fog things, this is fogged and going light. So no clue what happened there, but yeah, no idea. I don't know what would cause something to go light like that and soft. I mean, it looks like a light leak, but it isn't, because it's backwards. And let's see here, there it is again, same thing as before. So yeah, well, that's actually all of the images that I have. And I have a little list here, some other stuff that you can look for that I've never seen. And that, actually, the one thing that I've never seen, I've never actually seen anybody give me an example of it. I've never heard of anyone having a problem with it. And that is air bubbles on your negatives when you're processing your film. Everybody bangs their developer tank down. I've had some people suggest that I'm not even aggressive enough in banging down my developer tanks. But I've never had a situation where I've had air bubbles on my negatives. And air bubbles on your negatives would look like the sort of thing that you'd see on the inside of a glass if you've got a glass of Sprite or ginger ale or something like that. You know, perfect little circles that would be sticking to the film. Never seen it happen. And then the other thing that a lot of people struggle with is having a red stain on their T-Max 100 and 400 negatives. And the only solution to that is lots of washing and especially good strong fix. That'll take care of most of the staining on those negatives. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, so that was, yeah, sort of a mishmash of problems that I've experienced with some of my negatives. And all of them, well, not all of them, most of them are workaroundable. Most of them I can retouch out. Most of them I can crop or figure out, or I have another frame that I can use. But I will say that, you know, ones like the images getting ruined because the chemistry wasn't adequate in the developing machine, and certainly the backing numbers offsetting against the frames. Those two were really tough. I mean, nothing were my fault too, which is also, you know, kind of beneficial. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So if anybody else has any ideas about you know, negative problems that they've had, you know, I'm all ears. It seems to be sort of unlimited in terms of how you can mess up your negatives, and yet somehow I really love shooting film, and I just keep going. So thanks for watching.